feel a little more confident? Let's
Yeah.
do it. We're diving into an English learning podcast today. And I thought it was really interesting because, learning a new language really requires so much confidence, don't you think?
Absolutely. And one of the things I really liked about this podcast was how they talked about confidence as a skill.
Oh,
It's not something you're just born with. It's something you can develop and get better at over time.
kind of like leveling up in a video game, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they talked about how it's all about this thing called neuroplasticity.
Okay.
It's basically the way our brains are wired to learn and adapt. So every time we step outside of our comfort zone,
Right.
our brains can actually rewire themselves.
Wow.
So we're actually building new pathways.
So it sounds like it's not about like this magic overnight transformation where suddenly you're just fearless. It's more like if I keep practicing these confidence skills, my brain will actually change.
You got it. It's like building a muscle. So the more we practice these confidence skills, the stronger those neural connections become. And one of the things that they emphasize is embracing mistakes.
Yes, I love that. They actually called them proof that you're trying,
Right.
which I think is a great way to reframe it. But that's often easier said than done. How do we actually make that shift from dreading those mistakes to really embracing them?
That's a really great question. One of the hosts tells a really relatable story about their own struggles with learning Spanish. And they were saying how they were so terrified to even open their mouth, worried about making mistakes and sounding silly.
Oh, I so relate to that. I mean, it's that classic fear of judgment.
Exactly. But they kept pushing themselves, even if it was just like ordering a coffee in Spanish.
Yeah.
And they eventually realized that each mistake was just this opportunity to learn and improve.
Yeah, you have to be willing to be bad at something before you can be good at it, right? Did they have any strategies to help actually put that into practice?
Yeah.
Because I think we can all agree it's one thing to know that we should embrace mistakes,
Right.
but it's another to actually do it.
It is. And one of the things they recommend is instead of focusing on this big, scary goal, like, I want to be fluent in a new language, or I, want to give this amazing presentation,
Right.
break it down into smaller steps.
Okay, so more manageable steps.
Yeah.
So instead of like, I want to be fluent in English, it's I want to learn 5 new English words every day.
Exactly. Exactly. Because every time you hit one of those smaller targets,
Right.
your brain actually gets a little hit of dopamine,
Oh, I like that.
which is that feel-good chemical. So it reinforces that behavior and it keeps you motivated.
I like that a lot. It's like those little confidence boosts along the way really do add up over time. So we're rewiring our brains, we're embracing those mistakes, and we're setting these realistic goals. What other confidence boosting tips did they have?
They also talked about the power of positive self-talk,
Oh.
which can be so powerful for shifting your mindset.
That inner critic can be brutal. How do they recommend we deal with those negative thoughts that can really sabotage our confidence?
They talk about using affirmations,
Okay.
which is basically replacing those negative thoughts with more empowering ones.
Okay.
And it might feel a little strange at first, but if you're consistently, saying to yourself, I am capable or I am worthy,
Right.
it can actually start to change the way that you see yourself.
It's like we're replacing the old tapes in our heads, right?
Exactly.
With a new soundtrack. It's like being our own cheerleader.
Exactly. And speaking of cheerleaders, they also talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the people that we spend time with, it can have a huge impact on our energy, our self-belief.
Yeah, you become who you hang out with.
Yeah.
It's like they say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if we're trying to build confidence, it makes sense to surround ourselves with people who believe in us.
Exactly. Exactly. It creates this positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
So when you surround yourself with people who believe in you, it reinforces your own self-belief.
It's so much easier to kind of step outside that comfort zone when you have people there to cheer you on.
Right.
Building our own little confidence crew.
Yes.
I love that they mentioned that supporting others could boost our own confidence too.
Absolutely. There's something so empowering about recognizing your own strength and resilience and then using that to lift other people up.
Okay, so we've talked about confidence as a skill, embracing those mistakes, setting realistic goals, the positive self-talk, surrounding yourself with a supportive community. What other practical advice from this podcast can help us actually put all this into practice? So many great tips already. What else did they talk about?
Well, they also talked about visualization.
Okay.
And I know that might sound a little out there,
Right.
but there's actually a lot of research that shows that our brains have a really hard time distinguishing between something we vividly imagine and something we actually experience.
Wait, really? So you're telling me if I close my eyes and I really vividly picture myself like nailing this presentation at work, my brain's gonna be like, yeah, we did that.
Exactly. Like you're creating this mental blueprint for success.
Wow.
And when you combine that with the positive affirmations, like you're really, doubling down on rewiring those neural pathways.
Wow. So it's like giving yourself a little sneak peek of success,
Yes.
which then in turn makes you more likely to achieve it. Do they have any tips on how to make those visualizations really stick? Because I'm not sure I'm a very visual person.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they recommend is engaging all of your senses.
Okay.
So it's not just about picturing the scene. It's also about imagining what you're hearing, what you're feeling, even what you're smelling.
Okay.
The more detail you can add, the more real it's going to feel to your brain.
Okay, so really kind of bring all of those senses into it. I like that. What other tools did they recommend?
One of the things I really liked was this idea of keeping a confidence journal.
A confidence journal.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more. I love to journal. So how does that work?
It's really simple, but it's powerful. The idea is that every day you write down at least one thing, big or small,
Okay.
that made you feel proud
Okay.
or that boosted your confidence in some way. It could be anything from acing a task at work to having a really great conversation with a friend to even just trying something new.
Right.
It's really about shifting your focus from what you haven't done yet to what you have already accomplished.
Yes, and I think it's so easy to get caught up in our to-do lists and everything that we haven't done yet that we forget to acknowledge all of those little wins.
Exactly.
Which are so important.
Yes.
It's like a way to celebrate our wins no matter how small.
Exactly. And to really track your progress. And, sometimes you can even look back and identify patterns and you really see how far you've come.
Yeah, and I think having that physical journal to look back on could be such a game changer for those days when that inner critic really starts to come out.
Absolutely. It's like having this collection of your own personal highlight reel that you can return to whenever you just need a little boost.
I love that. Proof is in the pudding.
Exactly. Because we forget about all the amazing things that we've done.
You do.
And it's so easy to get caught up in, striving for that next goal that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
Okay, so we are training our brains, we're embracing those mistakes, we're setting realistic goals, we're speaking kindly to ourselves, we're surrounding ourselves with this amazing supportive community, we're visualizing our success, and we are keeping a confidence journal to track all of our progress. Is there anything else we could do to really up our confidence game?
Well, they had a really interesting one. I'm not sure what you'll think of this.
Okay.
But they talked about power posing.
Power posing. Okay, you're going to have to explain this one to me. Power posing. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued, but I need to know more. What is it and how does it work?
Okay, so basically it's this idea that our body language, it doesn't just reflect how we feel inside.
Okay.
It can actually change how we feel.
Wow.
So if you stand up tall, shoulders back, chin up like you're,
Like a superhero?
Yeah, like a superhero, exactly. Even if you don't feel confident in that moment, your brain gets the message that you are.
Interesting.
And there have even been studies that show that holding these power poses for even a couple of minutes can lower your stress hormones.
Wow.
And boost testosterone, which is actually linked to confidence and feelings of power.
Okay, so just changing my posture can actually change my brain chemistry.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's amazing. I'll have to try that before my next big meeting. Are there any, poses in particular that they recommend?
Well, they talked about the victory pose, just putting your arms up in a V shape, like you just won a race. Apparently, if you do that for a couple minutes before, a big presentation or something, it can really help calm your nerves.
Okay, I am 100% trying that one. That's my favorite, those little life hacks. This whole conversation has been so interesting. We think about confidence as this thing that people just have or they don't, but this podcast really breaks it down into these practical steps that we can all take.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought was so interesting was they were saying how confidence, it's not just about feeling good.
Right.
It can actually have this ripple effect on other areas of your life.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. When we feel confident, we're more likely to take risks. We're more likely to go after those opportunities. We're more likely to put ourselves out there.
Exactly.
Both professionally and personally.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the more you learn and grow, and the more you expand that comfort zone.
Right.
Which leads to more confidence. So it's like this upward spiral.
I love that. It's like confidence is contagious.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side, When we let our own insecurities hold us back, it doesn't just impact us.
Right?
It impacts the people around us.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a big takeaway. So it's not just about building confidence for ourselves, but it's also about inspiring that confidence in others.
Yeah,
And I love that that starts with us. It starts with taking those small steps, celebrating our progress, and just being kind to ourselves along the way.
you got it. It's about recognizing that we all have something unique and valuable to offer, and when we step into our own confidence, it allows us to really shine, and it allows others to shine too.
I love that. Well, on that note, that wraps up our deep dive on confidence. But before we go, we want to leave you with a little something to think about. Think back to a time when you learned a new skill. Maybe it was learning to ride a bike or cook a new dish or even just navigating a new city. What were the steps that you took? How did it feel when you finally mastered that skill?
That feeling of accomplishment, of overcoming a challenge, that's confidence in action. And the more we tap into that, the more we realize just how much we are capable of.
So true. So keep practicing those confidence-boosting habits. Keep cheering yourselves on. And remember that even those small steps can lead to really incredible transformations. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining bright.